freestyle this because I'm really disorganized this morning. First off, thank you to all of the artists that performed last night. Giamarino. Fucking crushed it. Like, I feel like all of us who know Adam were like elated to see him in his prime last night. It was pretty amazing. Jonathan from Piyama, where are you at? Right there in the back. They played like 86 songs last night and no one wanted to leave. It was rad. And then Sean Bonnet, of course, if you were there last night, it was a pretty remarkable moment when he played Nights in White Satin. I have a clip of Brendan from Secret Tape. Literally like energy is pulsating out of his soul. It was pretty great. And yeah, thank you to Cornish Pasty, Arizona Distilling, obviously Kyle Beachy. Where are you at, Kyle? There's no way I'm going to remember everyone who spoke at the reading last night, but if you were privileged enough to be there, it was a really special, remarkable, and emotional night. All right, so I am going to go to a private place somewhere in the back of that gym with Eli, and we're going to go through all of the Spot Seekers submissions. There are like 200 clips mixed in with all of the content from last night's event, so it's a little bit of a headache, but we'll make it work. But yeah, I'm super stoked to announce this panel. Ted Barrow is a very dear friend of mine, Event City co-host, my Switch backside Lodestar, and most importantly, a guy who is currently skating in the Tom Knox 600 New Balance shoe.
Thank you, Ryan. Whoa, is this really loud? Is this worse? How about this?
He's got a mixer, you're good.
Yeah? Okay, even me out. I'm super nervous. I was not a sober skater last night, and mega fried right now. But I first want to just thank everyone for being here. This is my 4th academic conference to Pushing Borders. This is the 2nd one I've done here. With the exception of Stoke Sessions, I'm pretty much like a grizzled vet of this circuit. And the reason I keep doing it is because it truly is the highlight of my year, because I'm surrounded by people that care as much, if not more, about skateboarding and all of its many ways that it feeds into and enriches our lives and the lives of others. So I want to acknowledge that first. I wrote this maybe I'll just read it. This is weird. I wrote this with one eye, on my bed, on my phone, last night. Can I read it? Okay. It's oof. Well, first, also, before any of that, since this is the last panel, I do want to acknowledge that we are skating on native land, and that wherever we come from in the North American United States or Canada or wherever, we are living on top of Indigenous people's history, and we need to acknowledge that and just be humble and in gratitude. And okay. I can see. If this is your first, second, or third iteration of one of these conferences, this is how I drunk text. You don't need me to tell you, you know. Let's just please take a moment to acknowledge one another and all of us as a group. We are all here because we love this. We are skateboarders. I feel like Jim Tebow right now. Drawn to places that invite our imaginations and encourage us to pursue this nebulous act that can be roughly summarized, I think I'm also channeling Kyle Beachy, in the infinitive construct, to skate. Whatever that means to you, whether it means moving through life's hardships and sliding over bumps that got you here. I'm being extra cringe so no one else has to figuring out the way to unwind the endless entanglements of the mind. I was channeling Adam's excellent rapping there. Or if it's just a physical act of bounding your body through space. I have learned a valuable lesson about this, about what we all mean when we talk about skateboarding. We lead with our hearts. My goodness. I'm so very grateful to the organizers and hosts of this conference this weekend, all the other panelists and presenters whose work I didn't get to see, and people with whom I did not get to skate. We share the same heart. Wow. Okay, now I'm gonna introduce... do not encourage me. I'd like to introduce my panelists, and then I'm going to give a little lecture about modernism, and then we're going to talk about architecture. I'll begin with Mike Barker, who I used to skate with at the LA courthouse. Grew up skating with Paul Rodriguez, architect of, or around Paul Rodriguez, right? 118? Oh, word up. Architect of 12 years, skateboarder of 30, occasional inspiring writer. He's written for The Village Psychic, and under the Spot Research Instagram handle, as someone who also researches skate spots, I will say that I have baldly and boldly stolen much of my information and repackaged it on Thrasher's This Old Ledge from Michael's very fastidious and careful and beautifully articulated research, where he explores the history behind skate spots and the architects and ideas that shape them. To his, oh, what up, Eunice? To his right is Chris. Giamarino. Let me just, am I pronouncing your last name correctly? Okay, there we go. Giamarino. Okay. Who has a PhD in urban planning from UCLA. His dissertation topic was titled Planning Just Public Space, Reimagining Hostile Designs Through Do-It-Yourself Urban Design Tactics by Unhoused Communities in Los Angeles. His focus has been Googie architecture in the West LA courthouse, where Mike and I used to skate, I believe. We will get more into that in the talk. Next slide. Oh, wow. This is the most radical font, huh? You probably recognize this from Thrasher's classic video, Skate and Destroy, from 1996. Rounding out the Texans part of the table, where I am, we have Shane Yee, originally from San Diego, California, the principal designer at Skate Ecosystems. He earned his Bachelor of Architecture degree from the New School of Architecture and Design in San Diego. Mr. Yee has a broad range of experiences and capabilities in all phases of project planning, design, and construction, from acquisition through operations and maintenance. Mr. Yee is also the only person wearing a suit in the building. To his left is Bobby King, the principal builder for Skate Ecosystems. He earned his Bachelor of Arts degree from Stephen F. Austin State University in Nacogdoches, Texas. Mr. King has over 15 years of experience in skate park construction, designing, and building facilities around the world. His unique skill set include oversight of shotcrete material specifications, quality control, quality assurance, concrete placement, finishing, structural rebar, custom steel, and cast concrete. He lives in what I assume to be sort of like an anarcho-utopian commune outside of Austin that if you've ever been lucky enough to visit, it's incredible. I'm not going to give everyone your address, but those who know. Okay. So these are some of the questions that I'm going to want to address. Is there such a thing as skate architecture? Is that red really fucking with everyone's eyes? Wow, yeah, sorry about that. Don't look at that, just, yeah. And what architecture may be best for skateboarding? What is the difference between building and architecture, or construction and design? How does knowing the history of architecture and design contribute to / help our understanding of skateboarding? How do spots happen? I might have written that question drunk. What kinds of assessments do we make when thinking about spaces, and how might these spatial pathologies help with space outside of skateboarding? What constitutes a real spot, and can we design a spot that outlives its role as a skate spot? Over the past few years, I've been thinking about this. Did I just get weird again? Okay. Because I've been researching spots in San Francisco. And I think as my test case, I'm gonna talk about St. Mary's Square in the International Building, which is a 1961 kind of international style skyscraper built in downtown San Francisco, right across the street from Black Rock. If you guys can picture that, that spot. Cool, yeah, Keith Huffnagel, RIP. You might know this spot better as the Cardielno side. This is a park that was designed in the mid-1950s as part of an urban redevelopment project, the construction of freeways, the construction of suburbs outside of San Francisco, the gradual hollowing out of the city. And this is the kind of landscape that we find ourselves drawn to as skateboarders. And so this is an early version of St. Mary Square before it was built above a parking garage. You can see this kind of like classical, directional, very boring, featureless park. And then in the mid-1950s, it turns into this undulating ribbon concrete form. One of its principal inspirations was Donnell Park, or Donnell Gardens, designed by Thomas Church with help of the landscape architect Lawrence Halprin, who designed Embarcadero and Lovejoy and all these other kind of epic late modernist spots. And that pool from Donnell came out of Alvar Aalto's 1930s pool in Finland. So we owe the empty swimming pool and that whole history of skateboarding to a Finnish modernist architect. As I said, the Cardiel No Slide gets owes its existence to urban redevelopment, the construction of skyscrapers, the corporate corridor along California Street, where all these skate spots are at their base. And you wouldn't have that without the freeway. So you have garages, you have roads, you have automobiles. Look at the way in this rendering, the transportation is foregrounded right there. Very, very important. And I would say that, even the most benign or anodyne thing would get its inspiration from maybe French modernists like Le Corbusier. You'll notice how the windows on this sort of reflect the windows on that. This is a house, the Villa Savoie, that was designed as a kind of suburban villa, with an automobile planned on the bottom, sculpture garden on top, strip windows facing the countryside. I also sort of think that when we talk about modernism can mean many things. It means efficiency, industry, modernity, speed. But it also means a sort of top-down solution to large-scale problems. And I think this is really embodied by this plaza and the fact that the layout of the landscaping and the paving kind of looks like modernist paintings, like Joan Miro or Piet Mondrian, the sort of irregular grid or these biomorphic forms manifest in the design of the ledges themselves. Also the use of concrete. Prior to World War II, there weren't concrete ledges, something I've discovered in my research. Let's see. Okay, so all that brings us to that. Epic covers and epic skating. Why modernism? Well, because during the Second World War, the burden of history and the kind of historical forms like figurative sculpture or fascist-looking eagles were enlisted to support totalitarian regimes but the USSR and Nazi Germany. And so modernism spread to the United States because a lot of these architects from Western Europe fled Germany during the Second World War, and they got jobs at universities on the East Coast often, like Harvard, Cornell, MIT, etc. And they trained the next generation of architects who would then design all of the plazas that we have historically been drawn to as skateboarders. Europe was bombed to hell during both wars. They rebuild in this sleek modernist fashion. The growth of cities, in the case of New York City, African-American families from the rural South, mainly because of mechanized agricultural machinery and also lynching, moved to northeastern cities, St. Louis, Chicago, New York City, Boston. So cities grow and architects design these new cities. This is a rendering of a glass skyscraper by Mies van der Rohe. He will figure heavily in, I think, this talk. And you can sort of see the way in which he pathologizes old, moldering ruins on one side. This looks like a bombed out city with this beautiful, prismatic, idealized building rising above it, gleaming. I think that the modern ledge comes from his Barcelona pavilion of 1929. Do y'all agree? I feel nervous about this saying in front of architects, but yeah. There it is right there, the first like real slab ledge. Sorry, Bobby, I didn't mean to zap you with my laser. He also will design, plazas like the Toronto Dominion Center, TD, in Canada, I guess, and the Chicago thing. And I think that ledge survives in vestigial form in places like LA's DWP, where Jason Dill skates in photosynthesis, and where I learned my first switch flip back tailslide in the year 2000. You should all know. But I also think that there's a more kind of a vestigial relationship between some of these big ideas and how they manifest in well-known skate spots that, the Googie architecture that Chris, for example, will kind of get us into a bit later, has its roots in the concrete plasticity of things like Le Corbusier's Notre Dame de Ronchamp, seen here. Okay, let's see. Yeah, Bauhaus. All right, so now, I just ended it. Yeah, Bauhaus, cool. That's it. No, so I'm gonna round table first and ask each panelist to introduce themselves and talk about the first question. What got you into skateboarding, and how did that lead you to architecture? We will begin with you, Chris.
Hello. Whoa.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
Hi, everyone. How's it going? Unlike Ted, I didn't drink yesterday, so I feel amazing.
I would say I don't feel amazing.
I'm still recovering from Friday night, actually. That's why. How I got into architecture through skateboarding. My aunt, who is in attendance, is here. She and my dad grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I'd go every summer. I'm from Anaheim, California originally. Experienced a lot of spatial isolation in these loop and lollipop street suburbs. Didn't have access to public skate spaces. I originally wanted to be an architect. I'm not an architect. I'm an urban planner. Why I'm not an architect? In high school, I attended an architecture workshop at ASU, and I built a house that had a multi-decked half pipe in the middle where you'd have to go up the stairs, drop in to go to your office, walk over, drop in to go to a kitchen, and I was 16 and the architect professors just tore me a new one. This is impractical, so I'm like, I'm gonna study planning.
It's also a bit ableist.
That is true.
Okay.
Yeah, just stairwells and half pipes.
Yeah.
That's only because I dropped in once on the indoor vans half pipes
Okay.
before it closed. Yeah, and then I remember not having access to public space in Anaheim. Between my neighbor's driveway and my driveway, there was a little dirt gap, and my dad and I built a fun box and kind of started to create this DIY public space on our driveways. And then I just went and studied at NYU, Columbia, and then came back to California.
Most important question, when you were in New York, did you skate the best skate spot in the world?
Yes, I didn't know at the time, but this guy with long, wavy hair with a bald spot, Max Palmer, was skating at Fat Kid. I remember this is the first skate spot I skated when I moved to New York City. I got off the plane, went to Fat Kid. It's called Fat Kid because, if you want to define it, I don't.
Lou, you would know this too, but didn't Aaron Zott come up with the name Fat Kid?
Yeah, maybe. I couldn't be 100% sure.
Yeah. Even fatter. It went from like F fat to PH fat when that natty court came up.
I remember an overweight child that was actually seen there or had skated there.
No. Yeah, not a spot for overweight children, just a spot when you want to channel your inner fat kid. Please continue, sorry. Thank you, Lou.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. I can ramble for a while. First time I saw this spot, there's me drinking a Modelo behind Eunice Courthouse. First time I saw this spot was DVS Skatemore, Jason Dill's part. Skated this heavily, and I wanted to go there. I didn't know it was in New York City at the time. Yeah, that's pretty much.
What got you into like urban design then?
building with my dad and not having access to public space. And then kind of experiencing the spatial isolation, shitty public transportation in Orange County.
Nice.
Yeah.
Trying to fix the world through the paucity of your childhood.
The positive launch ramps and fun boxes.
Nice. All right. Mike.
Hi everyone. I'm so grateful to be here with wonderful skateboarding world as well, because I feel like I've been gone for a while, and I had a short-lived career of sorts. I obviously had a terrible problem of growing up skating with Paul Rodriguez.
Like having the best skater in the world be your
And I would say that shaped me because I was never that good, clearly, like most of us aren't. But I think
got a mean backside Smith, my friend.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I tried really hard. No, I just wasn't that good, and it was awkward, and they'd go skate the rail spots, and I would go around the corner and find my own kind of unique spot and try to find my own thing. And I think so I was always drawn to finding something different than what was normally there, even though I grew up in a very normal and privileged existence in the San Fernando Valley of California. And I think, to DWP, we were probably ships in the night, because I think when I discovered that spot, it opened my eyes to this is what skateboarding is about. We didn't have access to skate parks, so I'll get to this later, but that was like heaven to me. Going to DWP in the middle of the night, 1 a.m., just doing nose grinds, feeling the granite, and I was obsessed with that. And I think that eventually translated into a love for architecture and just appreciating the environments around me. And that's what skateboarding ultimately became about, was exploring the city that I lived in. And I think when I was skating and trying to get something out of it, I wasn't having a good time with it. I think the best times in skateboarding were far before any sort of sponsorship came around for me. And I skated very hard. I got hurt. I had a shin splint that turned into, basically my shin was broken and I could see it coming through. And my doctor basically was like, you just can't do anything for a couple years. It was a year and a half where I was just on the couch.
Okay.
Thinking, what the hell do I do with my life? And so I flailed. I did some writing, wrote really dumb articles for the LA Times about restaurants that opened.
Sick.
Which was kind of cool. And then they were doing massive budget cuts, and I'm like, maybe I can't be a journalist. This is maybe not a good idea. And then I also was always terrified of architecture because I was terrible at math. I literally failed the same math class 4 times in college. So I was talking to a gentleman yesterday who was like, I don't know, I'm not good at math. Don't let that stop you if you want to become an architect or thinking about it. There's computer programs where you could do visual scripting and all kinds of cool things that were completely different than what school gives you. And so went to school in San Francisco. Then I think I was kind of burnt out on skating, and I hung it up for a while, even though I was skating with friends occasionally. And moved to New York and designed train stations for about 10 years and airports, which was awesome.
Yeah.
But I really saw them as two different practices. But the commonality between them was that I was interested in people and public space, and I think that's what drew me to skateboarding in the first place, and that's what drew me to architecture eventually. And the reason I think I never put the two together was because I never thought of designing skate spots. It wasn't something you designed, it was something you found or discovered.
That's
So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, that's a very good segue to our 2 resident skate spot designers. Bobby, introduce yourself. When did you start skating? How'd you get into architecture? How do you turn on a mic?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm from Austin, Texas. Kind of grew up in the suburbs. And, similar to Chris, didn't really have much spots to skate. We'd have to travel a long ways, drive 20 minutes just to get to a park. And so whenever I was in college, I actually had to study abroad to Shanghai, which is one of the most dense urban areas. And I got to, find spots there and be with skaters where you could travel and find new things pretty much around every corner. And so that got me interested in the design of skate spots, and I was in a sustainable development course, also studying permaculture. So it kind of went hand in hand with how do we make our built environment more sustainable.
Can I just ask what permaculture is?
So permaculture is permanent agriculture,
Okay.
and it's studying how you create essentially ecosystems with your farms, as opposed to traditional monoculture where you just have one crop. You're growing, say, corn. Permaculture looks at how do you plant the crops together. So there's Native American practices called tres hermanas, and they grow corn with the beans, with the squash, and it's kind of all beneficial. You get your nitrogen fixing plants, and it's all takes up the same amount of space, so you're not wasting space.
Cool. So this development of ecosystems has informed both your and Shane's practice as designers and builders of these skate ecosystems. Yes.
Indeed,
Nice.
yes.
Shane, I want to hear from you. Thank you, Bobby.
All right.
Where'd you get that suit? And also, just introduce yourself, please.
I don't know where I got the suit.
That's great. That's great.
So, my name's Shane Yee. I consider myself somebody from the West Coast, but I live in Texas now.
Like many West Coasters.
Yeah, and actually, I consider myself a San Diegan. We could get into San Diego versus LA sometime. I love the aesthetics of that and how different it is. I would consider this more of an LA event, even though it's a Phoenix event, but it's more LA, New York. So San Diego is kind of like the provinces.
Has anyone heard of San Diego out here?
Culturally, it's a very more conservative place, and that plays out in various things like industry and aesthetics and skate styles. But I started skating in the mid-'90s. It was kind of like fulfill the dream era, but there weren't many places to skate other than we were kind of in the second wave, what I consider the second wave, where there might be a couple one-off 90s parks. But there was a lot of like Tampa 2000 type of like indoor privatized YMCA type stuff. So I was a YMCA kid in Encinitas and skated with Tony Hawk, Sean
No big
White.
deal.
Yeah,
Shaun White?
Sean White. I did my best skating probably before the age of 15, and I knew I wasn't going to be a pro skater really early on, but always did it, had loved it. Then in middle school, people started skating more because I was skating like really early on, and it was all street. So it was like that was kind of figuring out how to skate street after you'd been skating transition. And in San Diego at the time, it was really like I don't know who was around there, but it was like probably Welcome to Hell, Zero. So people were doing big stuff. And then I kind of met like Kevin Marks, who does Overload. He's in the back, and we kind of had a more like art crew or like more like core thing going on. A lot of pros, so many different styles of skating. And then there was kind of like like Skate 5/8 thing, Skate Mafia. So the parks got a little better. They did like Poway and stuff like this. And I just skated a lot of skate parks. And then kind of my dad lived up the street from Washington Street, so I was one of like the little groms there for a long time. And then started skating tranny a lot more. Like we were really into like the like NorCal stuff, like Deluxe and Anti-Hero. Kind of relearning that. YouTube was coming out. You could like learn about all these different things. Skated all the best street spots, skated around all the best skaters. Then I moved to the Northwest from San Diego and was living with Nolan Johnson. Nolan Johnson just left Lester Kasai's company, House of Kasai, with Jason, the team manager, and they were making Welcome.
Hold on. House of Kasai was still a thing, like in your era?
So Welcome is basically House of Kasai. A lot of people don't know
Them's
that.
fighting words, buddy. We're in pyramid country right now.
So since we were into like 80s stuff, it was all about like throwback. It was kind of like a postmodern. Like we had reached far enough forward. We were
Right.
like, we're gonna look back.
Time was eddying into a flat circle. Yeah,
so,
I remember that.
So I was with kind of like that Dope Planet crew, and then for me it was really important because I used to skate with like Tom Remillard when he was on Antario, Raven, Robbie, and we'd go skate the Northwest.
Yeah.
So it was great for me to move up there and actually take in all the Grindline and Dreamland work.
Okay.
Got to skate with Monk a lot at the vert ramp. stuff like that.
So that experience of like kind of being a Grom at Washington Street and going up to the crusty Northwest, having a retardataire attitude towards street skating eventually through your welcome enthusiasm, no disrespect, Ryan.
Well, welcome was transition at first.
Yes, I remember that. There's that crusty guy.
Yeah.
But did that inform your practice as an architect? And what do you
No.
do now? No, okay, no.
No. So then in Seattle, Seattle basically is a cool scene, but it gets too expensive. So all the weirdos moved to Ole.
Is that true?
And in Ole,
Are there some of these weirdos out there?
in Ole, that's where I really got to see artists.
Nice.
What I would consider a really, really good artist. And, you know, I went to the Evergreen State College and dropped out.
Sick.
Had a bunch of different disagreements with people. Ended up leaving the political left at one point. Moved to New Orleans to be a jazz musician. And that's where I discovered architecture.
Whoa. All right, cool. Yeah, nice. I was like, I feel like I just like had Forrest Gump narrated to me, like just all the different people, like who's like, you know, like your life is touched. That's amazing. All right, I'm gonna switch gears a little bit and ask a question that I kind of privately posed to all of you because I want to. So my theory about architecture and why we skate certain things is that it's modernism. Like most of the plazas that people skate, most of the spots that people skate, from asphalt embankments to the banks underneath the Brooklyn Bridge on the Manhattan side to Copley Square to Embarcadero, Love Park, whatever. It was built between the war, or like after World War II, and largely not built after 1990. So I want each of you to give me what your definition of modernism and whether my idea that this is relevant to skateboarding means anything. I'll start with you, Chris. How do you define modernism?
Sure. So I'm just gonna read off my notebook if
Yeah,
that's
fine.
totally chill.
Yeah.
Ted posed this during Thai food, and
Yeah.
I started to be like, oh, I'm not an architect. I studied modern town planning, which is in cahoots with modern architecture. So planning is just sort of this political process that guides future economic development, urbanization, city building, outcomes, shape of the city, structure, how people use it. I agree with some of the definitions you brought up earlier about mobility, clearance, post-war, top-down process of clearing space in the city, conceived in the minds of these modernist European architects that came over to the East Coast. It never really got to the West Coast in Los Angeles. Googie architecture did, which I can get into that in a little bit. Yeah, that roof, that saucer-like roof is a hyperbolic
roof.
paraboloid.
Yeah.
According to Alan Hess, but I won't get too into the weeds of that. But yeah, modernism was basically a reaction to overcrowded, industrialized cities. Made up this concept, the functional city, functional separation of land uses. At the time, power plants were being located right next to apartments without windows, without sunlight, so form follows function. A lot of use of steel, concrete, and glass. Plazas at the base of skyscrapers with the air rights, the 1961 New York City zoning resolution, which you talked about in this little ledge. And then this towers in the park concepts where people are in their public housing towers. There is grass below, there's parkland below, and everything's functionally separated, built around the automobile.
So it's like an abstract design for how people will lead their very unabstract and subjective lives.
Completely decontextualized from the local economic, political conditions.
Nice.
Just how people use space, so the social uses of public space, a lot of slum clearance. And slums, they weren't slums, they were mixed use, lower income communities of color that were cleared by highway construction, the construction of bridges. And that's why ultimately I think modernism somewhat failed. It wasn't a design flaw, it was the political economic situation that it was embedded in during neoliberalism and
That makes sense.
privatization of public space, all of that.
An example would be like housing projects, which were designed to, be multi-family units, like high density with parks, and they did not fail because of any fault of the people living there. They failed because they were defunded.
Department of Housing and Urban Development disinvested, elevators stopped working. Upper middle class residents, white flight to the suburbs, and then
Yeah.
complete disinvestment in the inner city.
Cool. All right, Mike. Modernism, tight or cringe?
Both. Because I think it. I'm going to read my notes as well because I can't remember all this. I think it's kind of the air we breathe. It's.
I'm gonna have Lawrence Halprin over here.
Yeah. I might flip the fork too, but
Okay.
but it's the air we breathe. It's all around us. It is. It's what enabled skateboarding to become what it is. It's like technology and capital and everything that happened in the mid-century and this massive progression of these things, culminating in this idea that you can have a clean slate. You can wipe the past, away, and you can start fresh. Tabula rasa, as Chris knows.
Ooh, stole that. Tabula rasa means clean slate.
Yeah, clean slate, wipe everything out, let's start fresh. And obviously, so it's a project of erasure. But at the same, and that's happening at a civic scale. But you think about it in terms of maybe art or something, and it has a different aspect to it, which, socially, okay, new forms of movement, expression, creativity. So all great things.
Yeah.
So skateboarding is this weird intersection of both because we rely on cities and places and this kind of large scale aspect of it, but also self-expression. So like we are modernists, and skateboarding is this kind of weird crux between them, and it creates this friction between the human aspect of modernism, which is usually lacking or is abstracted, and the built version, which never was able to fulfill its original intent. And
I just want to interject. That's why we titled this talk "Creative Destruction," because of that weird role that skateboarders and skateboarding has in these spaces.
yeah, and I think it is really all about technology too, and it's skateboards are a technology, and for me there is a technology for exploring space and the places around us, and I'm thinking specifically about skate parks and how maybe skate park V1 is kind of an abstracted version of the idea of skateboarding. It's like it's once again removed, and we have our tabula rasa for skateboarding,
Yeah.
but I think it's then devoid of the thing that made it interesting in the first place. And on the Corbusier, very prominent and often cited modernist, there was a project that he had planned in Algiers that I'll read a quote from, I think, Badoon magazine. Brian Ackley wrote this. And it was, imagine like a beautiful coastal hillside town that was going to be just flattened with these winding, massive super towers that you can imagine in like a New York City housing project. And like a full clean slate eradication of like what had developed organically for years.
It's just also, if it's in Algeria, it's a colonial project.
Correct.
Right,
Yeah. If built, Plan Obis would have been one of the largest and most ambitious modernist projects ever, an inspiring sight of monument and beauty, and likely one of its greatest failures. Clearly, disaster loomed in the project's disregard for Algerian social and religious traditions, the segregation of its workers and the European communities, and of course the abrupt change in the spatial arrangement brought on by its brutal scale. What is most interesting about the Plan Obis is now it is not imagining these problems, but contemplating the extreme disconnect between Le Corbusier's solution for Algiers and the romantic harmony, sensuality, and poetry of the exoticized other upon which he drew. And I think about art in relation to that as well. And many of these architects, claim to be inspired by, like Picasso was, by indigenous art or, very things that they othered as these kind of European colonial creators.
But it's an appropriation, and it's a sort of artificial cladding of some kind of alterity.
Yeah.
Otherness, yes.
And the last point I was thinking about, and I'm jumping ahead, sorry, but in like media studies, and I don't have a PhD in this, so please correct me if anyone does, but like the idea of the medium as the message, and And what we propose and what we built in our artifacts of skateboarding say as much about skateboarding or more than the tricks. And
Yeah.
You know, the more the content of what we're putting out there.
That's cool. Yeah, and I think that's a very good time to put you, Bobby, and eventually Shane on the screen. And shout out to Jake Johnson.
Yeah, my blog may have started as like a Jake Johnson fan page, because also you just have the best taste in spots. So
And pants.
It made it very easy.
Okay, so Bobby and Shane, how do you guys feel about modernism? And I want to sort of show these are their designs. Y'all, have you seen this? You guys follow skate ecosystems? Yeah, I made a meme about it. Society of... I got plenty of these. Okay, so as actual builders and as architects, are we just like blabbing hot air when we talk about modernism, or is this a thing that we should be concerned about as...
Well, I think in a linear perspective, it's easy to isolate, modernism as just this phase. And as you pointed out, it was kind of in context. There were these new materials, and coming out of industrialization, there was the ability for people to have some kind of foresight going into the planning process, and they saw the communities not being designed properly. And so I think modernism as a whole was kind of this paradigm shift into new planning. And I think it does lack the community. There was failures in that it lacks the community input and in the green space. And that's kind of where we're at today. We've still just gotten to this point where we're trying to design things sustainably. And one piece of data that I found that explains that really well is 100 years ago, the leading causes of death from our built environment were structure collapse, fire, and waterborne disease.
Whoa.
And so we're trying to solve these with modernist planning. And
I have a solution to that. Asphalt schoolyard, no trees.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a modernist solution. All right, go on. Sorry.
So codes, permitting, designing things with strict, rigid standards, that's all very modern.
Yeah.
And now today, the leading causes of death from our built environment are cancer, lack of exercise, and environmental disruption. So like unsustainable design, damming up rivers, and people downstream can't fish. And so we're still kind of figuring out there was a lack of human-centered planning with the modern phase. And I think skate architecture in general was still just a discovery of things that weren't intended to be skated.
Yeah. Shane, can you talk a little bit about whether these ideas of modernism inform your practice, sir?
Yes, well, me and Ted have been going on and on about modernism because we're heavily invested at this point with Chris and Mike and Bobby. But because it's such a broad thing, I wrote down here in my notes, I'm going to talk about it in two parts, as a style and as a philosophy. So I was actually trained as a modernist in many ways because we all are at this point, and I'm speaking in terms of architecture. And the first firm I worked at with Richard Yen and Associates in San Diego, he's like basically a modernist. We've gone past that now, so when I saw Ted's interest in modernism, I was kind of like, whoa, okay, I gotta kind of realign myself to this thing, because we're like 3 or 4 paradigms past that actually in the discipline. But I'll just talk about it as the style first. So
I do host a show called This Old Ledge.
He does. So, it is called This Old Ledge,
yeah.
True.
Go on.
So from a style, and I don't want to be too long-winded here, but from a style, it's always been a style and a philosophy. We don't know which came first, the grammar or the rhetoric, and Corbusier switches back and forth throughout his work. So as a style, Adolf Loos basically said, all of these are gingerbread houses. This is your grandma's house. All of these people have all these Greek statues, all this ornament. And he's like, this is a waste. It's dusty. It's unhygienic. Ornament is a crime. So that's kind of the start of it.
I'm going to interject for old school people. It's like when we shed our tailbones and rails and our boards stopped having like these like Baroque flourishes, like fishtails, and you know, like that was our ornament is crime Adolf Loos moment. Go on.
And when I saw Ted's show, I reached out to him in an email. I said, you know, it's Cézanne, you know, and it's like they were doing the same thing in painting, where they're like, we had the academician, and they're like, we don't want to do representative painting. So people broke it down in painting, and they broke it down in architecture. So that was kind of the style of modernism. So when I was learning architecture, if you did symmetry, that's too Beaux-Arts, that's too neoclassical. The teacher would come and they rip the drawing and basically make fun of you. If you do a hole punched window, which is not like, because modernism in architecture is basically since it ties in with the epoch of capital at the time, which was industrial, you get a free plan, which basically means you don't have little like rooms. It's not grandma's house. It's an open floor plan. The steel also frees up the facade, so you don't need to have like load-bearing walls on the outside. You can just do all glass.
Can I just interject you here? Those of you who were on my tour yesterday, you remember we were comparing and contrasting the colonial revival writer's house with the steel framed building. Yeah, okay, cool.
And then we have, Corbusier wanted pilotis, even though it has an S, it's always pilotis, which is basically he wanted to lift the house off the ground so it'd be more hygienic. And then roof garden. And then also long windows or ribbon windows, so you don't have a hole punched window. So when we learn architecture now, we're learning the modernist style. We're not learning the Beaux-Arts style. We're not learning classicism or Greco-Roman style. We learn modernism. And what this did basically was, I'm going to go into the philosophy of it. There's always, whenever you have a paradigm shift in the arts or architecture, usually there's a philosophy goes with it. The philosophy of modernism, this would usher in basically international Marxism, communism. And so they have been successful. Tokyo downtown looks exactly like Tempe downtown. There's no little Japanese buildings. There's no Roman. We basically created non-places. And part of the thing was like, it's going to be this industrial thing. It's just steel and glass and concrete, really humble materials so that everyone could have a house. But this is where we get into the crisis of modernism, where essentially the good society became the good life. So many people in California who were able to afford this kind of construction, it became basically a replacement for their kind of villas and estates. So that, in a nutshell, we basically created a bunch of non-places. That's one of the crises of modernism. And it didn't really reflect the philosophical, political aims that it was meant to. Hence, postmodernism, deconstruction, and whatever contemporary kind of oil spill that we're in now is. But
it's a flat circle, Eddie, like I was saying. If those of you who aren't familiar with postmodernism, you know Freedom Plaza, Pulaski Park in DC, skateboarders? Yeah. Postmodernism. So, when I grew up in Austin, I obviously worshipped at the altar of Pep Martinez. I tried to get the light blue Calvin Klein jeans. I think a huge part of what I did with my 4-on-1 arms had to do with how he held his arms when he was doing, you guessed it, switch flip backside tail slides at Pulaski. And there was one spot that just so vaguely resembled Pulaski. It was a high ledge about like knee-high, pink, like flinty Texas granite. And we would just skate the shit out of it every Sunday afternoon because we just wished we were in DC. Pulaski Park was designed by Robert Venturi and Denise Scott Brown in 1980. Postmodernism is about pastiche, it's about empty historical quotation. An early iteration of Pulaski Park, I'm so glad Mike you shared this slide, is they had like a little miniature Capitol building, like, like completely ornamental, like just on the plaza. And if you've ever been to DC and skated that plaza, you'll know that the paving stones are laid out to resemble the grid of Pierre L'Enfant's plan of Washington, DC. So it's like a quote of a quote built writ large on a plaza. And I didn't realize at the time that I was skating a late modernist plaza in Austin, and that was like my imaginary postmodernist plaza in DC. But postmodernism is basically like this type of shit, like pointless Capitol building on the plaza. You want to?
Yeah, it's so silly. But look at that pylon that's like 100 feet tall. There was going to be, they didn't build these. The plaza ended up being far less interesting than was originally planned for.
Far more skatable.
Far more skatable, but I mean, look at that backdrop. That's kind of insane, right? Like, I'm like sad that it didn't get built, even though it's so ridiculous. It's like in the America we're living in now, that's more like boot in your ass America. It's like, this is like granny New England America, and I kind of love it at the same time. And there's just a lot of, I don't know, in the blogging research that I do, there's so many cool spots that maybe would have been much different if things had gone a different route.
Yeah, there's the cool story. This will come out in a New York episode, but do y'all know that the same guy designed the Brooklyn Banks, Pyramid Ledges, D7 in New York, and like Battery Park City, like those ledges? What happened to Battery Parks?
Oh, it's gone. Battery Park's gone.
Climate resilience plan.
Oh, RIP. Okay. I never really liked that spot anyway. Well, anyway, M. Paul Friedberg designed all those things, and he actually had he was working with DC to design what became Pulaski, but Robert Venturi kind of elbowed him out, and he got relinquished to Pershing Park next to it. And they were talking about this ridiculous, the reason those pylons didn't come up is because Richard Serra, who was also working with the city, considered them like to resemble a Nazi rally, and that's, at least in the 1980s, was not something that Washington, D.C. wanted to associate itself with. Things may have changed. So I now want to talk a little bit, actually, Bobby and Shane, memes aside, what the actual fuck are you guys up to with these things? Can we just start with that? Like, how do you make these? How do you conceive them? Because I think that, like...
So, like good skateboarders, we're essentially trying to trick all the people in power into building more skate spots.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, the company is basically like, Bobby came up to me and he's like, "Hey, check out these sculptures that I had," and they were super sick. It was like a guy skating a shell and just random, really weird stuff. And I'm really big into ideas. Ted knows, I'm not even really here. That we could get into phenomenology versus abstraction if you guys want.
No, just keep it skate.
But basically, so that's why me and Bobby, I said, what parks have you done? He's like, well, Marble Falls. I was like, Marble Falls? That's like the sickest park. And then he's like, Cottonwood Shores. I'm like, Cottonwood Shores? You built a freaking skate park around this beautiful oak tree. I was like, those are some of my favorite parks. Let's get this thing going. Okay. So that's how it started. But how these form is, there's so much to say about contemporary discipline of architecture and process. But our thing is basically it's a critical metaphysical project, which has a lot to do with ideas, and essentially it's about what hasn't been seen.
Yeah.
Which is a lot different than like an a posteriori design. We're doing like a priori. So we're designing not based on I just copy pasted this ledge that I saw that was really cool. We're trying to think, it's a metaphysical in that it's beyond the physical. It's the ideal. We don't know what it is. We don't know what it looks like. We don't always design. It's not a top-down thing per se. We have processes that we go through, and then we select.
Okay.
So I don't want to get into the technology or the software or the scripts.
But you're using AI to design these things. You're using AI
Yes.
as a tool, yeah?
Well,
And-
well, let me speak to that for a second.
yeah.
So Ted said avant-garde. He said avant-garde.
Man, why you gotta air me out?
Me and him have a disagreement on this.
Whatever.
He said avant-garde art is ahead of architecture. I sometimes agree, but what I will say,
Because it's right.
well, it could be right, but what I will say is if you get 10 architects and you say, let's do hand drawing or line drawing versus artists, we will destroy you. That's because we are
It's not
technically...
a fucking competition, dude.
It is. So, it is. And
Like,
so,
who can do the most kickflips?
So what I'm saying is, it's not that we can't line draw. It's not that we can't copy. It's not that we can't sketch and diagram. We do all that. But where the discipline of architecture is at now is not a top-down thing. It's like kind of like death of the author. It's not really about the singular mind doing it. It's more about tapping into data, and for us, it's about what could be. So all I'm saying is our project is about that which hasn't been seen. And it also is a critical project, and it requires a pre-knowledge of what skate park design is. And when you encounter these things, it creates a situation where the viewer might have to do a close reading of what they're seeing. And
Okay.
that is a way that you can use architecture to go against power and not be basically not thinking, rolling into the skate park, I can do every trick I can do. Architecture has power over people. When you go to a great cathedral or temple, you will be submissive to that power. This is about speaking critically to power and what it's a difference of the everyday.
Okay. So you're creating these integrated spaces that aren't necessarily skate spaces, but that are super skatable if you're creative. And there are reprimands or a mandate against the fairly conventional and retarded terror designs of like a Spawn Ranch park or like a yellow ledge park in LA, right? Like you're not like helping people train for Street League. You're trying to help people like explore their body through space. That's not creepy.
Well,
Space.
yes, because we're thinking of it more in terms of we have to design for 3 people. We have to design for the local community. That's a very basic functional thing. That's like, I don't know if that qualifies as skate architecture where we're going with that.
No, it's Karens
So
and
it could just be,
crybabies.
that would be considered building.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, at this time, you can buy a ledge, you can buy a flat bar, and you can buy a quarter pipe. And arranging them on a slab is uninteresting. That's the local community concern. Then there's the international skate community concern. That's how do I get somebody from who knows where to want to go to the middle of nowhere to skate this park? And then there's our primary concern, which is designing for the world of culture, which some people say, hey, we can't afford the world of culture anymore. That's a whole different discussion. But that is where we're in conversation with artists, philosophers, architects. That's a very different way to approach a program than designing for a local community. So it's very complex.
Yeah.
But are we designing for Street League? I don't know. I don't even know if people want to skate these things. We don't know what the finished project is. We're trying to design what is not seen. And sometimes there might be something in there that's skatable, sometimes not. That's not up to us. Skateboarding is cool because you figure out how to skate the spot.
Yeah.
There's no point to me, if you can buy a flat bar at Target, why would I necessarily embark on that kind of thing?
So no flat bars. Okay.
Can I shout out also, like, what I love about the project and the images is not the skatable aspects of it and the details. It's like, in the Pushing Borders 2019 panel with Ocean Howl, Kristen was on it, like, there was talk of multi-use skate spaces.
Yeah.
And I think this is showing us images of that idea, and it's super powerful because I think as skateboarders we can start to imagine that thing now, and also for showing this to policymakers and people who are writing the brief for what, we're going to put a skate park here. Like, what could it be like? Who could it serve? What are the user groups? And I think we're not thinking critically enough about the user groups and what could be there. And I guess to the point earlier about like what's going to live on beyond skateboarding, or skateboarding has a rough patch coming up pretty soon. Like,
Yeah.
I think I like to imagine that we could build something that outlasts us.
Yeah, that kind of brings up a question about, we were talking about this over dinner, and this may just show our age, but I kind of remember growing up skating where you had to explore the city and campus or whatever, and there weren't skate parks, so skateboarding was a form of like finding your way through a place. And a lot of people have grown up at skate parks, and sort of there's this very different way of skating and approaching things. It's like training rather than I mean, maybe it's not, maybe it's fun too. But so I guess my question is that, does bad skate park design encourage bad skateboarding practices for the whole table? Yes or no? No. What do you?
Does bad skate park design encourage bad skateboarding?
How do we explain Burberry?
That's just his outfits are terrible. And
Yeah, but his skate park is the backdrop of this fabulous butterfly of a human.
I think there can be like a non-skateboarder, untrained landscape architect, those like 90s parks that were so hard to skate. I don't think those create bad skateboarders. I think they create better skateboarders. But the Spawn Ranch training facilities where we were talking at dinner last night, I didn't skate it in 2 weeks. I'm trying to do a 2 mile per hour nose grind, and this kid's like coming directly behind me, and he's like, I love the speed here. I love everyone colliding into one another. So I think, and I was like, are you fucking serious, dude? Like,
Yeah.
and he was like, yeah, I love it. We call El Sereno the Octagon. And I'm just like, that's the last thing I want to do when I'm skateboarding. I mean, give me some personal space.
Skate park is Terror Dome.
You are just waxing angle iron.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's creating a worse generation of of bad young skateboarders. Spawn Ranches, for example.
Damn, you are showing your age, my friend.
Yeah, I'm an old curmudgeon.
Right on. Mike, what do you think about the relationship between skate park design and skateboarders' behaviors?
Well, isolation's bad.
Yeah.
That goes without saying. I mean, define bad skate park design, because I love shitty skate parks.
Me too.
I'm DIY
listening.
parks are awesome.
Yeah. Mitchell Park is great.
Mitchell Park is great.
It's a
But
slab.
even kind of the crappy old, I mean, we're looking at pictures of these terrible skate parks in LA where the ledge runs directly into a quarter pipe, where you drop in directly into a ledge, and the ledges are kind of like angled in a way where you can never actually skate them, and the rails are 2 inches high and then become 4 feet tall. And I kind of love those shitty parks, because it's more like a spot. You have to adapt and you have to think creatively about it, and it challenges you. And I like the idea of skate spots or spaces, whatever they are, more as a prompt. And I think this is another topic from Pushing Borders a few years ago, was suggestive versus directive design. And I think you had images of some of the modernist playgrounds, and this idea, and obviously your guys' work too, right? This is Isamu Noguchi on the left, and that's Rich Holland on the right in Nike in the Netherlands. I think it starts to touch on these topics, but it's like you can do almost anything here. People can use these in different ways. It's not predetermined, and it could be for a lot of different people, as long as there's enough space to do that. So I think so bad skate parks are awesome, but also new bad skate parks are bad for
maybe there's enough bad skate
citizens.
parks. Yeah.
Although they might bring together community. I mean, there's I don't want to shit on skate parks because there's so much value in them. But
Chris, did you want to add something just before we?
I think we should obviously not accept bad skate park design, but we also need to think in relationship with what the city's trying to do when they collaborate with Spawn Ranch. Don't reach out to us about what we want in a skate park. Maybe we just want flat ground, like Kristen brought up at Pushing Borders. We just want some good flat ground. But the relationship between skate parks, where they're located in these interstitial areas, near freeways with a lot of pollution, that's a form of displacement of our community, and it then legitimizes the city's attempts to skate stop the courthouse in 2014 or fence off the Brooklyn banks. So this is something we want to think about too when we think about the role of skate parks in isolation or containment.
Yeah, and Bobby and Shane, y'all were talking about last night about the challenges of when you're dealing with like a representative of one of these mega skate park construction companies and how they sort of juke the system to get these contracts. Want to throw exposures here?
So I think in the biggest way, we're still kind of at the end of that modernist phase where, as you mentioned, we're isolating the skateboarders. Oh, you have your space here, and we're really standardizing the design of these spaces. And that is, in a big part, just to kind of appease these officials. Okay, this looks like a playscape. We have these brightly painted colors. The rails are all, steel, really simple to design and build. And they lack a lot of the architectural dynamism that you would find in natural skate spots. And so in that regard, I think skate parks do kind of stifle progression and creativity because people don't go to skate parks to film their spots, just to film their skate parts. And in a large way, like tranny skating, starting in pools, it was all about this discovery. And things weren't built perfect for skating, and so that is a big problem with skate park design.
Yeah, and then a lot of our stuff we do incorporate like the sustainability aspect to try to make it something where you feel like you're not just in a heat island in the corner of like a regional park.
Don't talk shit about Mitchell Park, please.
But it's something where people can vibe out or do what they like, feel like or maybe just look at it and find what's nice about it. So yeah, I think everything that these guys said is pretty much the standardization of skate parks has created basically non-places. Before, it would be cool to see a park and like it actually produced a unique style, skateboarding style.
Like Burnside was a
like
certain
Burnside,
type.
but like
you get your Red Ashley's.
There's a lot like sometimes there would be like small kind of maybe not optimized parks in San Diego, but because it had a certain thing, all the kids there were really good at doing that one thing.
Yeah,
and that was cool to see how the park could produce something that was of the place. And then when you just do international style and erase all that, and I mean it's hard. I don't want to all the skate. We've gotten to this point, and we're just proposing something new. But it's not to say it's a total failure. I mean, we had to go through those to figure out the heights of stuff, to figure out what might be ideal. It's not like a total loss. Especially the work of Grindline and Dreamland. I always say this. I think the reason people like those is because, and some of those are my favorite parks, is because it's kind of, I think that those were the first metaphysical skate parks. And what I mean by that is when Monk and those guys and Mike Swim and all these people were designing them, it was more than a skate park. It's like a portal to another dimension. And in doing that, in creating a critical project, it made something for people to want to go to. So I know Slow Impact is, I don't want to say it's mostly street skating, but I'll say this. A lot of people don't like the parks because what they did is just do if you do a 12-foot bowl in a little provincial town where no one skates, there's no shop, you've actually you've designed it to fail, and skateboarding will never pick up there, and there'll just be trash in the bowl and graffiti. So you have to design for the right size and to get people allowed to get into it.
Cool. Yeah. All right. With that design for the right size and like accessibility, I kind of want to talk to Chris and Mike about projects that they've been involved in, particularly like the courthouse in your case, maybe under the K Bridge in your case, obstacles and triumphs you've had in this realm.
Sure. Little personal backstory that ages me. Not that old, but the first first time I ever saw the courthouse, I didn't know it was the courthouse. It's a Baker 3. Andrew Reynolds does a little slash grind on the top with some iced coffee, and then a backside nose grind. I thought that was his coolest trick in his part, even though he was dropping hammers. But essentially, during my master's thesis, I was looking at how skateboarders utilize public skate parks, the beautifully designed Carl's Jr. Bank in Westlake by Rob Deerdeck, and privately owned public spaces. And my last sort of like ideal case study of shared public space, hybrid, serves multiple user groups, has a farmer's market on Sundays with music on the stage, acts as a form of shelter for unhoused individuals who require public space, economic sustenance for street vendors, was the courthouse. I can talk about Googie a little bit. My theory with or my argument with the 5-year maintenance contract in 2014 with Nike Skateboarding, it reopened the space for 5 years, but it essentially incentivized the city to then sell the lands to a private redeveloper because they knew that they could work with a corporation or a residential redeveloper to create and get rid of the courthouse.
Yeah.
So
let me just, does everyone know what that means? Like when the courthouse got turned into like a skate plaza and got metal ledges and they redid the ledges and painted it this beautiful blue and like primary colors, that was a temporary thing, and it was sort of like we give with one hand and we permanently take away with the other. We've been dealing with similar issues around UN Plaza in San Francisco. They had to, in fact, sort of sell the project as it was going to be temporary in case people started, objecting to the construction of a skate park in the middle of the city. Go on.
yeah, so we've just been involved in like do-it-yourself spatial politics with the developer.
How do I just want to jump in? How do you see the relationship between like the unhoused and skateboarders in these spaces? Is it antagonistic? Is it cooperative? Is it
Public spaces, like the best, it was something that got brought up in the first Pushing Borders in London, like public spaces, if they're good public spaces, there's gonna be conflict. There's social value in learning from different people that you don't share an experience with in public space. When a public space, like the courthouse, the ownership structure is transferred from public to private, you get rid of sort of the social value of public space, the use of public space for protests, politics, for skateboarding. In my experiences, I've just had conversations with unhoused people at the courthouse. One thing that the city started doing during COVID is they installed new like really bright LED lights under the roof because there were
historically inaccurate, anti-modernist bright LED lights?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Go on.
So no, there was just a lot of like hostile urban design going on from the city's perspective. They just hired like one of the most conservative city council members, but she has been very open to preserving some of the skatable architecture. So essentially, I will try and wrap this up really quickly, but when we were working with the developer, I was working with Alec Beck from the Skate Park Project. What we did is we created this Instagram page called Save Courthouse. This guy named Ali did. We attended community design shreds. The city didn't even really know, or the architects didn't know, abode communities that skateboarding had existed there for 30 to 40 years. So we hosted a DIY urban design event, invited the local community, got kids stoked on engaging in spatial politics, and the original plan was going to demolish all the ledges, get rid of the stage. They were actually going to excavate the stage with like a tractor, or maybe not a tractor, they need something bigger, but and move it to an underutilized parking lot. But we were able to kind of delay the project a little bit, and we got so much community support from this event, because we demonstrated that this place could be shared with skateboarders and families and the elderly and unhoused people, that they decided to preserve the stage. And
What's the fate of it now?
we have in writing from the neighborhood council that they are going to preserve the stage and a few of the skatable ledges and kind of maintain a public space with the new development. And we're not against the new development because the actual housing developer, considering LA's homelessness crisis, I looked it up, they're actually building low-income permanent supportive housing for unhoused people in this space. We were just more upset that essentially having ground floor retail was going to privatize the space, and there was going to be regulation, security, cameras, et cetera, that would not allow skateboarding in the future development.
Cool. All right, Mike, thank you. Can you talk a little bit about, there it was, your work with this European-style plaza
Oh yeah.
underneath the
It
bridge?
It was very brief. I'll admit, like, I went to 2 community meetings, so I didn't fundraise. I didn't do a lot other than I was like, I mean, there's probably a bunch of people who have actually skated here. I moved back to LA and have not actually been to the spot on the left in the illustration in the Jenkim Mag article there. But I hope to go soon. But I mean, European style skate spot? I don't think so. It's like a
You know how
DIY
Europeans like to hang out under bridges in Brooklyn?
Yeah, I mean, there's drinking. There's
Next to the
there's-
dump.
I'm sure there's some hijinks, but come on, it's a super fun site that's completely undevelopable.
Yeah.
And North Brooklyn Parks Alliance was fundraising because they wanted a neighborhood park, and they have done great advocacy. And I know they worked with Steve Rodriguez on actually the skate park that's near there. And they're great, and they fundraised for this and made it happen. And it's a giant kind of park underneath multiple blocks of what was DOT property, storage and underutilized space, like we see in Soma and other places all over. We can make use of these spaces in a better way, and skateboarding is an easy answer. So I don't think the fact that skateboarding happens there is special. I think it's just an easy solution to have some activation and activity there, because otherwise no one's going to go there, and potentially bring in further revenue streams for neighboring businesses, and maybe there could be new development. And I think maybe that's not a bad thing. It's when we talk about like what's happening in UN Plaza where it gets a little bit more contentious when we're talking about the in-house. But I will say, in those community meetings, I think I was the only skateboarder there, and so I was like, don't design anything that's like a skate park. Design something like some terraced seating that people can sit on, but also skate. And I was happy that it kind of turned out that way.
Yeah. It's basically the Israel plots of
Absolutely,
Brooklyn.
yeah. And like, I see Israel's plots as like, this is the utopian skate architecture project where, a city actually buys in and creates space for skateboarders within a public space. I mean, it's kind of, all right, Denmark is very different than the US. You actually have real public space that is not either street or recreational parks. And I think that's part of the challenge here, is that we have these heavily segmented zones, right, based on our zoning, and how our governments are organized around Parks and Rec doesn't talk to the planning department, who doesn't talk to development department, because I work for a city now and I see this firsthand, and people don't talk and they don't want to take responsibility for anything that could be outside the box thinking, right?
Yeah.
So we're a far away from Israel's plots, but I would like to see
More.
some advocacy for something like that, where we can actually share space together with people and carve out enough space, though, so we can do it comfortably. And I think your work starts to point to that, and I'm excited about it.
Cool. I think I have to pee, so I need to wrap this up, and I want to open it up to questions. Thank you all. Yes?
Oh, can I just speak to the slide, because maybe, I don't know if someone's going to ask about this,
Oh,
but
yeah.
like,
Jake Johnson, yeah.
yeah, Jake. But a lot of these spots, one of the things that I was finding in kind of the spot research project, because it was really just like a personal archival project that I was doing already, and I started posting about it. And so many of the spots that we have come to like be familiar with were designed in part by women. And I think that's really important, because visibility, speaking about the Women's Skate History Project a couple days ago, like visibility is so important. And at this point, I think it's about 23% of registered architects are women, and 50% of there's gender parity in school. So there's an issue with the profession where women drop out, and I think it has to do with the way offices are structured, and has been historically a boys' club, but I think it's important. Like Natalie Dubois, however you would say her name, worked on some of the first skyscrapers in Chicago, in New York, the Lever House, actual spots that we skate, and formed kind of the blueprint while she was working at SOM, which is kind of the ultimate corporate modernist architect, to design. They did Jaquan Plaza in LA. They did so many buildings in San Francisco that Ted's talked about as well. And I think it's just important to note that these were actually designed by women. And I would encourage more women to get into architecture, because maybe we can together have an impact on the built environment around us. I mean, also only 35% of architects are non-white. It's crazy. The profession's getting better, but I think I encourage people to get involved, and you can do it, and it's not the best profession, but you can help shape the world. And actually, planning is super important as well, because you write the brief for what we end up having to design.
Yes, you need planners, architects, and dreamers in the well-heeled suit. Well, yes.
Yeah, and if you want to become a planner, go to a workshop and design a house that has a half pipe in the middle of it.
Yeah.
You'll
Design
become a planner.
The most ableist, scary house in the world, and that's a great start. All right, let's do some questions. What do you say?
I've been deputized.
Okay. Yeah.
That's it. That's all. Maurice Crandall.
Thanks for all this. It was very interesting. My question is, when you grow up in a place like Clarkdale, Arizona, that is in the middle of nowhere, and for the major portion of my skating time, there wasn't a skate park, but when you finally do get one, it's a totally shitty skate park. What can you do when, you were talking about small towns with very little money, and you get a bad skate park, and then there, a lot of people, I talk to people and they say, oh, I've been to Camp Verde skate park. It's kind of fun. It's so crappy. It's fun. And it's not fun when that's all you have. It's terrible. And you want something better. So what can you do when you live in a place that isn't, Orange County, or isn't San Diego, or isn't New York City or Chicago, and what you have is terrible and you want something better?
So a lot of the times we're approaching these parks and rec departments, they don't realize that skating's an Olympic sport now. And they don't realize that there's been such a growth in skateboarding, and maybe this first park was a success, but ask them for another skate space, or do an intervention at the existing space.
Yeah, if, that happens a lot, where the one that they got isn't good, or now it's almost 20 years old, maybe 10, 20 years old. The thing about the projects that is the good side is that usually if you have enough people showing up to city council meetings, I would just say start with the grassroots, because the good thing about it is that they're collecting everyone's tax dollars, so they have tons of money. It's just a matter of convincing them where to spend the money. So it's just if you show up at the city council meeting 5 times in a row, I guarantee you can get 20 grand. And you don't need a lot of money to do something like Perry, which is really good for an intervention, in a small, not everything has to be skate architecture. Not everything has to be this crazy thing. It's kind of we just need more and more and more. And I don't know if anybody here is with ASU or associated, but if you are, come talk to me afterwards. You guys should work to get a skate park on the campus, because your school has almost unlimited amount of access to capital. And the fact that it doesn't have one is this new paradigm is we're just putting them everywhere. And some might be good, some might be bad. How do you judge? That's another thing. But yeah, it's not like the olden days where they're we don't like you guys skating downtown, so we're gonna put you in the corner. The next generation of these people that are doing the city councils and calling shots are actually a lot more open than you might think. It's kind of crazy.
Hot mic.
Ooh.
Yeah, Mike and I were talking before we came here about how the city's not going to come to you, so you have to go to them speaking to sort of the grassroots. What we did at the courthouse was hashtag Save Courthouse Instagram, and we used it to get skateboarders to attend these community design charrettes where the developer has a plan view of what they want, and then you just draw on a piece of paper. And we went enough times to where we were able to get, I got money from UCLA, speaking of accessing capital from a public university, and I just basically said, yeah, we're gonna do like a DIY event, we're gonna build ramps, we're gonna work with the skate park project to have a petition with a QR code where kids can actually give public comments. Kids are often ignored in these sort of decision-making processes. So just kind of make your presence known, go skate the city that you live in, let them know that there is a skate culture emerging, and attend these like community design charrettes, planning hearings.
Yeah, and I'd too that there's a lot of levels of it, of engagement. There's the city council, which is super important to like approach the city council, but sometimes there's commissioners. There's like tiers to reach out to. Yeah, neighborhood councils as well. Like I think partnering with other groups brings together a lot of power.
Open up the accessibility. Another question.
Can I just, Ted, one more? Just build friendly relationships with non-skateboarders. Convince the city that the public space or the skate park you want will be shared as well.
Befriend the normies.
So my question is about parks that are already existing. An issue that I find here in Phoenix is that we don't really have a lot of option when it comes to the summer months. We wait until 8 p.m. and we go skate. Lights shut off at 10. The parks that do exist, there are no trees, there's no shade. It's a huge park surrounded by an asphalt parking lot. It's uncomfortable. I've written papers about this. You feel the heat as you walk into the park, and it's not like the Wedge, where you can feel like a physical coolness to it. Despite it being mildly humid, you know that it feels different when you're there. But if you go to a park like D West or Goodyear or whatever, like, it's hell. And God forbid, you skate shirtless, but like, you fall, you're getting burned. That's not safe. So I guess my question is, what can we do as community members to kind of improve the safety of those parks and instill some sort of, like in these AI renderings, like there's plants, there's trees, there's shade. Like, how do we get into that? Because we don't have any of it.
There are a lot of nonprofits, and you can get trees planted, and partnering, like as they mentioned, with these other organizations is a good way to bring a resource to the city that they might not know about, and leading tree planting initiatives.
Yeah, usually it's the kind of thing where they start with a program, like all of our designs are a response to the program, and if there isn't an expert in there who knows this kind of stuff that brings it up, they won't do it. It might be out of their scope of work or their company's expertise. They might just say, we're only concrete. So for those kind of programmatic things, you really have to have somebody in there from the start of the project who wants to say, look, we need like shade or something to bring that up. Now, if it's already built going in there, same process. You just have to create an advocacy group or like a skate club, or just go by yourself. And the angle that you take is essentially what you just said, the safety concern, the not meeting the usability standard, etc., and then just keep the ball rolling on them, because there's so many different colors of money and pots of money, and skateboarders have been historically not good at getting institutionalized and stuff like this. The golfers are much better at it, so they have no shame. They'll go right up to whoever they need to do, and we're kind of learning these strategies. So yeah, just keep pushing them and you can get it.
The pickleball lobby is really strong in a lot of cities. So follow their lead and destroy them.
I'm kind of joking, but not joking, but I would just, if it's safeties are concerned, cities, when they build skate parks, they're worried that we're gonna sue if we fall down. So I wouldn't just, this is a joke, like threaten to sue, but I might do that. I think,
Would it not?
I think we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot as skateboarders in our local communities when we get super hyper focused on like the actual design of the skatable obstacles and not the amenities around. So that's something to constantly bring up: seating, trash cans, public restrooms, shade. Figure out whatever native or indigenous plant has the most shade cover that you can plant around the skate park or the street spot that you're trying to get skatable again.
Yeah, and befriend parks commissioners who like can advocate for these things on your behalf as well, to people who will eventually, hopefully, dish out the funding.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Once again, thank you for this. This has been an incredibly informative talk. So a question I have that is actually a continuation of a conversation from last year's Slow Impact about why the mid-90s is revered so much in skate culture. So I'll try to keep it short, or at least concise. So skateboarding, just like hip hop and punk rock, has its roots in the early 70s, but another thing that connects all three of those things is they are reactions, but also rebellions to modernism. You know, hip hop being born out of the projects, punk and hardcore coming out of not only the suburbs, but then also the tower blocks, council houses, the Bowery, and skateboarding being a physical reaction and also rebellion against that space. Is there any way to predict or anticipate what types of art or creativity is going to come out of the next wave of architecture and planning? Or is it really, it's a spark, it's a moment? Like, we'll never be able to have that kind of thing, that moment again, at least politically in this country, that will create the environment that gave us those three amazing things. But is there any way to predict what might be coming next?
Thank you, Patrick. Do you just think in full, beautiful paragraphs all the time? Like, that was incredible. I know, I'm so deeply like, there's like a joke in Reno 911 where he's like, they're talking about the FBI people and they're like, yeah, they like talking like full sentences and stuff. Like, so I'll try to answer, because I know that like we're kind of obsessed with the mid-90s, and two of us. And I do think that it's like a kind of simple formula for where skateboarding happens and what sort of spaces, and it was like modernist spaces that fell into neglect. In the case of like Justin Herman Plaza and Embarcadero in San Francisco, this was a place that was designed for these like urban scores and dancing, these kind of boomer utopian like hippies sort of like designed the space for performance, and then Reagan shut down all of the homeless shelters and the sanitariums and the state-assisted living, and so the unhoused kind of started to congregate there, and normies and corpo assholes left, and so skateboarders. See, again, I'm not you, Patrick. I can't speak in full thing, but so I do think that in each case, these were neglected spaces that had high aspirations when they were designed and just fell into massive neglect, and that fostered skateboarding. And I don't know, I was talking to Ocean Howell about this, no big deal. And he was just talking about how much better the concrete was that was poured in the 70s compared to the chalky garbage that's been poured from the 90s onwards. And it just doesn't seem like, even if a spot does fall into neglect, if it was built today, it's already been stopped, or it's built in such shitty material that it won't withstand constant skateboarding. So that's my partial answer to part of your question, but Mike.
I think if we're talking about the paradigm in architecture, I think right now the most discussed term is sustainability and addressing the climate crisis. And I think you've touched on this, right? And I think that's where actually skateboarding, I think, becomes less maybe subversive, but is partnering with an approach to public space that is more equitable and more maybe playful. And so I don't think architects have that much power, actually. We just make pretty pictures and buildings that become postcards. And I mean, I think there is power to shape experience, but planners certainly have a lot of power as well, and aren't necessarily trained to think outside of the box. But I don't know where I'm going. I'm not talking shit on you, but I mean, this is like what I've experienced. I don't know where I'm going with this, but yeah, I think even with playground design today, right? Like playgrounds got so terrible for kids, really, like because of like one lawsuit in the 80s, and they're starting to get better again. And I think people are like discussions are opening up about public space, and new people are city council members who might have skated at some point in time. Hopefully on the more progressive side of things than the ones we do see, but I don't know. I'm gonna ramble forever.
Oh, cool.
I'll
Chris,
stop.
you want to just save him? No.
All right, here's my uncreative answer as a planner.
Yeah. What is it? I want the perspective in the box.
In the box? Okay, as a modernist planner. Okay, I think, Patrick, I can't predict the future. I didn't care about the mid-90s. I was 2005, I saw the courthouse. I'm sorry, Ted. But in my dissertation research, I was working with unhoused communities that were engaging in DIY urban design tactics to provide life-sustaining infrastructure for themselves. Public restrooms, public showers, hacking the city, kind of what we do when we're street skating. So if we want to go back to this like 70s, 80s DIY punk culture, I would encourage all of you to occupy a plaza if you want. It's the most politically radical thing we can do as skateboarders. Find an interstitial space with just good flat ground and just start building. Just start building ramps, build what you want to skate. That's my answer. All right.
Cool.
So I'm the skateboard program coordinator for the city of Moorhead, Minnesota. It's like 4 hours away from Minneapolis, 4 hours away from Winnipeg. The skateboard department just started existing last year because I went to the city. I'm the only one on the team. We built the first skate park in 21 years, but it's just like all wood stuff, movable. We have to put it away for the winter. The city just got a $500,000 grant to redo a full park. With that, the community got to vote on what they wanted in the park. I got everyone together, and we're gonna get a spot for a skate park. But since they're redoing the whole park, what can I do? Like, I have support behind me right now. I have power to do something cool. Like, who can I reach out to, put skatable design throughout the whole park?
So, what fate, is it a new park? Do they have a space allocation for a park?
Park, and they have the space, but they're redoing the whole thing. They're putting in a pool, edible forest, natural playground, the skate park. But since the skate park is right there and they're redoing everything, I feel like there's a lot of potential to put, skatable architecture throughout.
So basically, the contract that the city has to design that park will be with either a master planner, but they're changing the names of master planners to vision planners, and or a landscape architect. So the person who will be ordering the program that was given to them. So the skate park goes. What else is part of the program?
A part of what program?
The program. What else is going into that park?
There's an edible forest, natural playground, a swimming pool,
Okay.
playground, basketball courts.
So the landscape architect will be hired to basically order that space. They'll hire a sub like us who will come in and design the skate park portion of it. Sometimes you can interject early enough to say, we don't want a skate park tucked away in the corner. The job of the architect is form space and order. We just order spaces. We're kind of like organizers. So the best thing that you can do to get something that would be maybe a critical or metaphysical project would be to connect with those people and tell them we don't want to be designated in one spot of the park. We want a skatable experience throughout the whole park, and have them and voice that in the community input meeting or anything that you can to make it where their response to the program, because we work for clients. Our response to that brief that you provide is what we're left with. Sometimes we can provide other options, but if it's already been segmented in the corner of a park, you can't do anything.
So I would reach out to the planner or the landscape architect and make it known that you guys don't want just a heat island in a corner. You want an experience. So that's what I would say to do.
And what's the organization you're working with? Could I possibly reach out to you? Because it's very beginning
Oh, yeah.
stages right now. Oh.
So our organization does consulting, planning, project development, construction documents, design, and build. So that's our organization, Skate Ecosystems. So if you wanted to, we could take a look at it and provide you with some stuff. We would be honored to do that. But we don't really, I mean, there's most of the Minnesota stuff goes to the big ones because there's an overarching advocate up there that works with some of the corporates. So it's hard for us to think about projects like that. Like we like to stay in our local area, Texas. But it's something we would love to partner with, for sure.
I just maybe had a statement. Usually, some type of board of directors is the one that's going to have the final decision. And then there are like consultants that work on these projects, but the main decision makers is going to be the city. So they'll go out there and they'll kind of recommend what they think the types of materials and design should be, but ultimately it's going to be whoever is in the city, either in design or like Parks and Recreation, whoever they are, they're going to have the final say, or like whoever like the fund managers are for the project. And then it will usually always get some type of final approval with some type of board who is in charge of like city, county, or whatever. That makes sense.
We're probably down to one or two more questions.
Kyle, could I just add on to that really quickly?
Chris, yes.
Sorry, Kyle. I think storytelling is really important, like which voices in your skate community are ignored, whether it be what do you want in this skate park, write it down or draw it and have that material to present to the city council member, and then hopefully your skate park design can be a little bit more like equitable and inclusive for people of different skill levels or ages. So I would try and incorporate some form of like visual or written textual storytelling with your local community.
Yeah, we started a youth program last summer, and now people in the city are starting to come to me, like the visitors bureau, this sort of thing, so they're wanting to work with me. So I'm finding myself in a position where I'm respectfully holding power to do something cool, but it's just me, and I don't really know what I'm doing. So if anyone here has any sort of advice or things they can throw at me, I'm welcome to take it and run with it.
For the opinionated. One last question. Jake, did you have a question? Johnson? No. I was hoping.
All right, I don't know if this is a question or more of a statement, but you mentioned a park at ASU earlier, and I'm an alumni now, but when I was there, I used to run like the women's skate club, and I tried really hard to repurpose this one park right by the campus that doesn't have a use. It's literally just a patch of grass. But I think what people fail to realize is that working with a monster of an institution like ASU is so hostile. Like they have a lot of money. They definitely have my tuition money. So it's hard to get them to spend it on actual community resources. And I feel like those of us in here who have worked with ASU and have had contact with ASU, they're just not, thank you for sponsoring the event, but not like always open to change. And what they told me specifically was that they weren't open to that over like a lawsuit. Like they're just afraid of getting sued. NAU, Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff has a bouldering gym, and they mentioned that they would never even have a bouldering gym because of a lawsuit. So they seem to be very, very careful, and again, mindful of their money. So I guess the question in this string of thoughts is, how do you deal with like such, I don't know, it makes sense, right? Like they have money, give us money, let's do something with it. But like, how do you deal with that hostility? How do you deal with when you're like starting from nothing? I'm not a planner, I'm not an architect, I fail math 4 times, definitely not gonna be in that. But like, what is the starting point with something that is being so hostile
to skateboarders that are even on the campus at times, to our women's skate club that was a registered club on the campus. You know, what can you do from an urban or architectural like point of view with like fighting such a huge monster per se? But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's totally true. I didn't want to make it sound easy, like there's all this money laying around, but we've run into that before with the university thing. A lot of it just has to do with education, and I'm actually not the best person to ask about this. That would be more like a skate advocate, because they're really good at positioning the argument in a way that's about equity, inclusion, and in a way for like something like that, I would say marketing, because you could get new people to come to the school. So it's like, from what I've seen, I'm just speaking from my experience, the people that don't give up always get something. And it's hard with a skate club on school because, you know, we're working with that with Texas A&M right now. People graduate the club and then it's like you lose a lot of your teachers, your contacts. It's really hard, but all I can say is that from what I've seen, the people that didn't give up ended up getting something. And that's usually most of our clients.
And like the rock gym, just if you sign a waiver, it kind of eliminates the liability, and it's the same premiums that they pay for basketball courts as well.
Well, their argument was like someone overnight sneaking in or something, and like
Undesirable non-ASU students.
Yeah. They accept everyone.
Yeah, so I agree, just kind of like editorializing, publicizing the sort of hostile urban designs that are impacting your skate club or other non-skateboarders. A lot of it is like skate stoppers, regulatory signage, lighting, loud music, things that bother us when we're in public space as skateboarders or as unhoused people are innocuous to non-skateboarders. The skate stopper doesn't affect them. So, you know, I know a lot of effective organizing in LA with like the Services Not Sweeps Coalition is just Venice Planters is a Twitter page, and they're just taking pictures of where cities, neighborhood councils, private citizens are just erecting planters on the sidewalk to displace encampments. So I think just having that sort of evidence against your university is really important.
I have an idea. This is like half serious, but I was just thinking about this when I was giving the tour of walking around ASU yesterday. I noticed y'all have so much pebbled concrete, that horrible cobblestone bullshit. And I'm proposing to Eli that he break his wrist skateboarding on that again. And then he can, third time's a charm, sue ASU for the awful concrete and then have them build this neoliberal loopscape in lieu of an A-frame. Don't like that. Okay, cool.
All right, y'all, let's have one more round of applause, please, for Ted Barrow and the panelists.
All right, we're gonna take about a 10-minute break. We've got all of the prizes sorted out, the awards. It's pretty exciting. We're gonna play them on the computer and play the audio through that speaker and watch them live here like a premiere. Thank you to everyone for contributing so many awesome clips. It was a little bit of a headache to get through them all, but there was so much good shit. We added like 10 awards. So please go to the bathroom, grab some food, come back here in 10 minutes. Please come back. Thanks.